And welcome, this is Baller Scuba with another random game. This is Dear Esther. Now this game has a little bit of controversy behind it because some people do not consider it a game. However, I enjoy it no matter what you might label it as. For those of you that have not seen Dear Esther, I would highly suggest that if you are considering playing it, to play it instead of watching videos on it. I think it's a much better experience for you if you go through it yourself as opposed to watching somebody else go through it. I think it is quite poetic. For those of you that want something towards an action game, this is not the game for you. This is a game in which your character does very, very little. In fact, the only controls that you really have are walking around and zooming. However, it is quite an experience, I must say. So let's go ahead and get this started. I have beaten it, so I do know most of the story. It's hard to say that anybody can truly know the story of this game now. So we will go through it and I'll explain what I mean as we do. Now, I have been told in the past that this book is based on the Book of Esther. I recently just read the Book of Esther, and to be honest, I don't necessarily see the comparisons, but there are definitely biblical, not necessarily imagery, but references throughout the game.
Dear Esther, the morning after I was washed ashore, salt in my ears, sand in my mouth, and the waves always at my ankles, I felt as though everything had conspired to this one last shipwreck. I remembered nothing but water, stones in my belly and my shoes, threatening to drag me under to where only the most listless of creatures swim.
So that is our narrator. He will be with us throughout this entire journey, and here we have found a lighthouse. Not much going on. It looks long abandoned. Oh wow, this is quite old. It's hard to say how old exactly, but I'm thinking maybe 30s, 40s, something older. I don't know. I have some letters here, and we have been introduced to another character, Esther, who the writer seems to either be talking to or writing letters to. I would assume writing letters because he formed it with Dear Esther. Certificate of approval. Electronic and control management. So some sort of electronic certificate here. And we have a molecule. Alright, let's see. It's C2H6O. We'll just move on and hopefully we'll figure out what that means eventually. Whoa, seagull! The hell, seagull. Now, you might be saying, okay, I can't control the flashlight, by the way, like I said. It's just me moving and zooming. That is all that I can do. The flashlight operates automatically. Now, this is built, if you ask me, very similar to a horror game, but let me calm any of you that might be scared of that. There are no jump scares or anything like that in this game. This is not a scary game at all. But to be honest, they build it up like it might be, but there is never a scare in it. We will just continue going as we walk along this island. We'll occasionally get some more dialogue in the form of little snippets, and it is up to us to put the plot together from those pieces of dialogue, plus what we see. It's random what will come up. It seems that there are certain places where I can go that will trigger dialogue, but it's not always the same dialogue. So every time you go through this, it will be a different experience. I don't know what island we're on or where it is. There might be a canon for where it is. Perhaps on the wiki it'll say or something like that. But to me, this looks like an Atlantic coastline. It's hard for me to say whether or not that means Eastern America, Eastern North America, or Western Europe. But it feels like an Atlantic coastline to me. That's what it looks like.
Those islands in the distance, I'm sure, are nothing more than relics of another time, sleeping giants, somnambulist gods laid down for a final dreaming. I wash the sand from my lips and grip my wrist ever more tightly. My shaking arms will not support my fading diaries.
His fading diaries? So it definitely implies that he is definitely writing something. he's writing something, and he doesn't sound very well. But here we have a piece of math. Now I know some of you that have never seen this before don't instantly recognize this as a piece of math. Possibly it just looks like a giant 6 to you. This is the Fibonacci numbers, the Fibonacci sequence, illustrated in visual form here. It starts here, and it can be a little hard to explain, but Fibonacci sequence is a series of numbers. It starts with 0 and then 1. And then you start adding the previous two numbers together to get the next number. For instance, it starts with 0, 1. You add those together and you get the third number, which is also 1, because 0 plus 1 equals 1. And then it just goes from there. 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, and so on and so forth. And as you keep going, you get closer and closer to a number referred to as phi. I believe it is phi. That is the Fibonacci number. It's I forget the exact number. It's roughly 1.6, and that is considered a very beautiful number.
I have found the ship's manifest, crumpled and waterlogged under a stash of paint cans. It tells me that along with this present cargo, there was a large quantity of antacid yogurt bound for the European market. It must have washed out to sea. God knows there are no longer gulls or goats here to eat it.
There is definitely at least one gull, because it flew right over my head, and I could see it. Goats, I can't really speak for, but he definitely implies that this place is fully abandoned. But then who drew this? I would assume that this would go away once the tide came in. Assuming the tide does come in from here. Definitely looks like it's coming in. What I mean by a beautiful number, I know some of you that's going to throw off. Beautiful number, it is used in architecture a lot. I know Da Vinci was a huge fan of that number and used it to diagram the human body, which is why if you look at Da Vinci's paintings very, very closely, you'll notice the noses are a little bit too long. That's because he tried to force the number into places that it necessarily wasn't. I know a lot about math. What do you want me to say? Let's just continue on. Hopefully we can get some more dialogue and we can try to figure out what's wrong with this guy. It's relatively unclear whether or not the narrator is the same guy that we are controlling right now. It's a little uncertain, but we know he's not doing so hot. Very nice, very nice. I must admit that I'm a fan of this scenery. One of the best aspects of it is if you look out here, you can see that no matter how far away from something I am, it is still moving. The entire ocean is moving. For an indie game, I must say that is quite nice. You don't always see that.
The mount is clearly the focal point of this landscape. It almost appears so well placed as to be artificial. I find myself easily slipping into the delusional state of ascribing purpose, deliberate motive to everything here. Was this island formed during the moment of impact? When we were torn loose from our moorings, and the seatbelts cut motorway lanes into our chests and shoulders, did it first break surface then?
Wait, what? He's talking about the island being formed at... What? Hey. That looks carved, that mountain over there. He's talking about the island like Lost is talking about the island. Is this a magical
When
island?
someone had died or was dying, or was so ill they gave up what little hope they could sacrifice, they cut parallel lines into the cliff, exposing the white chalk beneath. You could see them from the mainland or the fishing boat, and know to send aid or impose a cordon of protection. Wait a generation until whatever pestilence stalked the cliff paths died along with its hosts. My lines are just for this, to keep any would-be rescuers at bay. The infection is not simply of the flesh.
Oh, apparently whatever this guy has got is not necessarily physical. So, from what he implies, this way would be the mainland. I don't see the sun anywhere, nor do I know what time of day it is, so it's hard for me to say which direction that is, but the mainland is that way. He said you could see the lines from the mainland. That is interesting. We'll just keep moving though. And I choose right. There's a little fork in the path there, but they pretty much lead to the same spot. Nice. I love the landscape
I
here.
quote directly, a motley lot with little to recommend them. I have now spent 3 days in their company. That is, I fear, enough for any man not born amongst them. Despite their tedious inclination to quote scripture, they seem to me the most God-forsaken of all the inhabitants of the Outer Isles. Indeed, in this case, the very gravity of that term, forsaken by God, seems to find its very apex. It appears to me that Donnelly, too, found those who wander this shoreline to be adrift from any chance of redemption. Did he include himself in that, I wonder?
Okay, so now we have another name, Donnelly. And Donnelly apparently was on this island before our narrator. And the people that lived here, because apparently this place
Dear
is...
Esther,
Oh.
I met Paul.
Paul.
I made my own little pilgrimage. My Damascus, a small semi-detached on the outskirts of Wolverhampton. We drank coffee in his kitchen and tried to connect to one another. Although he knew I hadn't come in search of an apology, reason or retribution, he still spiraled in panic, thrown high and lucid by his own dented bonnet. Responsibility had made him old. Like us, he'd already passed beyond any conceivable boundary of life.
Now we have another name, Paul. Whether or not that's Paul Donnelly, I don't know, but apparently Paul has done something wrong to this narrator. Okay, this confuses me. I'm sorry. I just have to point this out. It looks like the water is coming in from the ocean, but you can clearly see that it is a river, and the water over here is going out. And they just kind of form here. I don't know. I'm just overthinking things. There is a cave over there. Let's head into it. I don't believe I can get over to that wrecked ship over there, so we'll just avoid that and head into this cave.
I threw my arms wide and the cliff opened out before me, making this rough home. I transferred my belongings from the bothy on the mount and tried to live here instead. It was cold at night, and the sea lapped at the entrance at high tide. To climb the peak, I must first venture even deeper into the veins of the island, where the signals are blocked altogether. Only then will I understand them, when I stand on the summit and they flow into me, uncorrupted.
I have no idea what he is on about, but apparently there's some sort of house here, a bothy? Okay. That's the same molecule, C2H6O. Once again, hopefully we'll find out what that is. Is there anything on the ground? Oh, little handwritten notes. And whiskey! Lots of whiskeys. What the hell is that? Oh, it's a sleeping bag because he tried to sleep here. Okay, so maybe we're not the narrator? Maybe we are the narrator, just we're recollecting how the island was? It's still a little unclear. Let's just head out of here. There doesn't seem to be any place we can go through here, so we'll have to find another path. So back outside it is. And nothing's really coming together. I mean, we have a few names here. We have a Donnelly, we have a Paul, we have an Esther, but how these relate to each other, I'm not sure. As the music kicks up again. Let's just go along this path here, which we hadn't gone before. We're on the other side of the river now. I'm kind of expecting dialogue. Usually when there's music, there's a little dialogue. I'm not hearing any. So we'll just keep going. And yeah, here's the fences again, but this place is long abandoned. They wouldn't let stuff grow like this on a path that people walked along a lot. At least I would hope not. Very nice water in there. Nicely rendered. I like it. Yeah, let's start on this side.
I've become convinced I am not alone here,
Really?
even though I'm equally sure it is simply a delusion brought upon by circumstance. I do not, for instance, remember where I found the candles. or why I took it upon myself to light such a strange pathway. Perhaps it is only for those who are bound to follow.
Candles? I don't see any candles. So he thinks he's not alone. It's hard to say what's going on here, though. So let's go to this place, which, to be honest, reminds me a little bit of Stonehenge. I know it's not necessarily accurate at all, but you know, the mini monoliths, I guess you could say. And hey, what is this? Chemistry Units 3. Interesting. And here is another molecule, obviously, but what it is, I have no idea. Those all look like N's to me. I'm sorry, I didn't get very far in chemistry, so I don't know what all these symbols are or what that could be, but definitely a lot of N's for nitrogen, which implies that it's some sort of biological compound, to be honest with you. Maybe CHOs are in there somewhere, just shorthand. It's hard for me to say. I was kind of looking for another book here. I swear I remember another book, but I don't see it. So we'll just move on up this path here. And we'll continue going, and hopefully we can try to find out what is going on. Because I don't know about you, this is somewhat interesting to me. It does pick up. We definitely start, going through the plot a little bit more quickly. But I believe this is towards the end of chapter 1 over here through this little gorge. But trust me, it does pick up. If you haven't played this game before, you are in for a treat, hopefully. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Let's hop down here. And that does end the chapter. So chapter 1 is down, and we know very, very little. We know a few names. We know that the narrator seems to be sick as hell, and it's a mental sickness.